It was a cold autumn evening when Sophie, a young journalist, arrived at Hollow Creek, a forgotten town known for its eerie silence and the legend of its haunted woods. She had heard stories of strange happenings, whispers of shadows lurking in the trees, and mysterious lights flickering at the edge of the forest at night. With a notebook in hand and her camera slung over her shoulder, she was determined to uncover the truth. The town's locals were reluctant to speak with her. They either ignored her or gave her warnings with nervous glances. "Don't go near the woods after dark," one elderly woman had said, her voice shaking. "They say the forest. It wakes up at night." But Sophie was undeterred. She'd seen plenty of haunted places before. What was one more ghost story to add to her list? That night, after a quick dinner at the only restaurant in town, Sophie made her way to the edge of Hollow Creek's forest. The sun dipped behind the horizon, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch out like fingers reaching for her. She paused, her breath catching in her throat as she looked up at the towering trees, their branches twisting like skeletal hands against the sky. Determined to get the perfect shot, she stepped into the woods, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. The air grew colder as she ventured deeper, the only sound the crunching of leaves beneath her boots. Suddenly, a twig snapped behind her. Sophie spun around, heart racing, but there was nothing there. She shook it off as a trick of the wind. Minutes later, Sophie came across an old, abandoned cabin. The windows were shattered and the door hung loosely on its hinges. Intrigued, she stepped inside, her flashlight flickering as she scanned the room. It was empty, save for a dust-covered chair in the center. She approached it, noticing a peculiar symbol carved into the floorboards, a circle with an intricate design inside. Suddenly, the temperature dropped drastically, and Sophie's breath became visible in the air. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up as she felt something, or someone, watching her. Her flashlight flickered again, and when it came back on, a shadow darted across the far corner of the room. Sophie's heart pounded in her chest. She moved toward the corner, her steps slow and deliberate. As she reached it, the air grew heavier, and a low, guttural whisper filled her ears. "Leave now, or you'll never leave." Frozen in place, Sophie turned toward the doorway. Standing there, bathed in the pale light of her flashlight, was a figure. Its eyes glowed like burning coals, and its face was a twisted mask of agony and rage. Sophie's breath caught in her throat as the figure stepped forward, its footsteps silent, yet ominous. Sophie bolted for the door, but the moment her foot hit the threshold, the ground beneath her seemed to shift. The earth groaned, and the walls of the cabin seemed to close in around her. She could hear the whispering voices now, chanting in unison, urging her to run, to escape. But Sophie's legs felt like lead. A cold hand wrapped around her wrist, pulling her back into the cabin. She screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the forest as the door slammed shut with a deafening bang. The next morning, the people of Hollow Creek found the cabin abandoned, the door wide open. Sophie was nowhere to be found. They searched the woods for days, but there was no trace of her. Some say they still hear her voice on windy nights, calling out from the woods, her final words forever etched into the air. "I should have listened,"